Sometimes examiners tend to jumble up a little bit of words here and there, and that tends to confuse the students. But what if your concepts are very strong and nothing can beat you? So, in today's video, we'll be discussing such tricky questions, tricky statements, and also try to clear your concepts as well. Hello everyone, welcome to Score Settled. Now, a recent trend that we have been seeing in the question papers, especially MCQ type question papers, that the formula which is there, it is expressed in words. It's just that the main parameters are shifted here and there. And as a result, that tends to confuse the students and they tend to lose easy marks. So that's what we are going to correct in today's video. So let's begin. Now, this question, consider the following statements and identify the correct ones. So according to Accelerator models, investment demand is proportional to the change in GNP. Yes, this statement is true. So formula is like investment is equal to accelerator variable multiplied by the change in income. So it is directly proportional to the change in income. Investment is directly proportional to the change in income. That's what your accelerator basically states. So A is right. So with this, we can just strike out option 1 because A is not there. Then the real rate is the nominal rate of interest plus the inflation? No, it is rather the other way around, that your nominal rate is equal to real rate plus inflation. See, if you didn't know this concept, you could just go wrong easily. Okay, so that's what we have to avoid. We have to avoid such silly mistakes. Okay, so B is wrong. So with this, we can strike out option 2, we can strike out option 4, and we are left with option 3 as the right answer. Now, next statement, the higher the real interest, the higher is the rental cost of capital. Yes, this is true. So what is this rental cost of capital? It is nothing but an implicit or an explicit price that the firms pay to use a unit of capital. Okay, so what is the price the firms are paying to use capital? That is what a rental cost of capital basically means. So this statement is true. Investment is a stock concept? No, investment is a flow concept. Right? We say that investment is nothing but change in capital. This change is always a flow concept. But on the other hand, capital is rather a stock concept. Okay. Last, rate of interest is a flow concept. No, rate of interest is neither a flow concept nor a stock concept. It is simply a percentage or a ratio. That's it. Everything does not need to be a stock or a flow variable. Okay, so E is also wrong, right? Moving on to the next question. Identify the correct statements from below. The first UN Conference on Human Environment was held in Norway in 1972. No, year is right, but the place is wrong. It was held in Stockholm in Sweden. Okay, so A is wrong. So we can strike out option 1, we can strike out option 3. Then in I is equal to PAT, expression P stands for poverty? No, it stands for population. So B is also wrong. So you can just write it down that in I is equal to PAT, okay, I is your environmental impact, P is your population, A is your consumption consumption per person or wealth, and T is your technology. Okay, so P stands for population and not poverty. Then pollution tax was suggested by Pigou. That's true. It is also known as Pigouvian tax. Population growth follows a logistic distribution. That's also true. And hedonic pricing is an environmental valuation method used in valuing tourism sites. No, it is basically used to evaluate the value of your environmental amenities. okay, that affect the marketed goods basically. Okay, so we are talking about environmental facilities or amenities and not specifically related to tourism sites. It's tourism sites is just a part of it. So E is wrong, so answer is fourth. Okay, moving on to the next question. Now, as per the gravity model of world trade, which of the following components of the two countries determine the volume of trade between them? Okay, so according to the gravity model, just for your information, it is basically the bilateral trade between two countries based on two parameters. What are those two parameters? Their economic sizes, right, and the distance. So the trade is positively related to economic size. So if the country is bigger or it has a high GDP, the other country will be willing to trade with it. On the other hand, it is inversely related to the distance. So if the country is far off, so the other country, the trading country, would be discouraged to trade with a far off country. Okay, so more the distance, less is the chance of bilateral trade, and more is the economic size, more is the chance of bilateral trade. So it is basically economic sizes and distance. Okay, so A and B, none of the other. C, D, E, no. So A and B only, and this is the right answer. Moving on to the next question. Now consider the following statements. If a market generates a side effect or externality, then the market solutions are inefficient. Yes, externalities lead to inefficient results. So this statement is true. So we can strike out option 4. If a market is efficient, then the quantity produced in the market maximize both producers and consumer surplus. Yes, an efficient market does lead to maximum satisfaction in terms of consumer and producer surplus. So B is also right. So we can strike out 3. Now, consumer surplus is the buyer's willingness to pay minus the seller's cost? No. It is willingness to pay minus what the consumer actually pays, or the market price of the product, right? And not the seller's cost. So C is wrong. Smith's invisible hand concept implies that competitive market outcomes generates equity among the members in the society. No, Smith does not talk about equitable society. It just talks about maximum gains. That's what is the main criticism of Smith's idea, that we are not talking about equitable distribution. We are just talking about maximizing income, right? Whether it is equal or unequal, it does not matter. So D is wrong. So we can strike out option 2. Competitive market equilibrium is Pareto efficient? Yes, that is true. So option 1 is the right answer. Okay. Moving on to the last question. A feasible solution in a linear programming problem must satisfy all the problem's constraints simultaneously. Yes, that is a necessary condition. You should satisfy all the constraints. Need not satisfy all the constraints, only some of them. This is just a contrast to statement A. So B is wrong, right? So we can strike out 4. Okay. Must be a corner point in the feasible region. That is not necessary. Not always necessary, right? May or may not optimize the value of the objective function. Okay, feasible solutions does not always imply that you are maximizing the objective solution. Rather, you are choosing the outcome out of these feasible solutions that optimize the results. Okay, so a feasible solution does not always mean an optimum result. So D is right. Must be greater than or equal to 0? Definitely yes. So A, D, E, option 1 is the right answer. Right? So with this, we come to the end of the video. I hope you found something useful out of it, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye, and all the best. Take care.